Greetings and salutations. Welcome to another episode of the Pod Ones podcast. Today we'll be talking about the Disappeared arc, part 1 and 2. Roll the tape.
You never would have made it as Obi-Wan's Padawan, but you might make it as mine.
Today we have two very special guests, two newcomers to my very special podcast called the Pod Ones podcast that I started many moons ago to talk about the Clone Wars, my favorite show of all time. I'd like to first bring in our first guest, Lucas Egan.
Hello.
Hi, Luke.
Thanks for having me on your podcast, the Pod One podcast.
Anytime, Luke. It's been a long time. I know you have begged me and pleaded with me. You have sent me fan mail to be on this podcast, and honestly, I had a long list of people to get through before you. I really wanted to keep the ball rolling with quality guests. So we're finally at the moment.
We're finally at the bottom barrel. Guys.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, we're not quite
me for the last.
We're not quite at the bottom because I'd like to bring in our next guest, who I think really is at the bottom of the bottom of people who I really didn't want on this podcast. But after receiving, let me check, 27,000 death threats saying that if I'm not on the next episode of my Podwans podcast, I finally had to let him on. So let's bring in Hereth Productions.
What's up? I'm production. I'm sorry for the death threats you had to receive for your creation of your podcast, of the Pod Ones podcast.
It's okay. It's okay. You're here against my will.
I'm here against your will. Here at Productions.
But yeah. So Luke, let's start with you. Where can I find you on the internet? Because you found me. Where can I find you?
You can find me at the Pod Ones podcast. Ironically,
weird. Why did you steal my
name?
Name?
Oh, you gonna sue me over it now?
I might.
Well, you're not gonna
get Chris, Star Wars lawyer.
You're not gonna get any money for this. I hope you know that. So very little. The Pod Ones podcast on TikTok, the Pod Ones pod on Instagram, and Pod Ones podcast on Twitter. And usually every Thursday nights when we're not getting hijacked by Chase.
Hijacked. That's a funny word for plagiarizing. And Harry Styles, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me at Hereth Productions on TikTok, and here Thursday at Pod Ones podcast. Luke, what's going on? Like, did you steal someone else's idea and just slightly change it to Pod Ones instead of Padawan podcast? What the hell's going on?
I don't know.
Damn,
to be honest, to like give people a little perspective, audio listeners. So when we sent out the sign up sheet, Chase put in bold, Chase by himself, no Pod Ones. So we just went with the joke and let him have this episode hosting it.
This is like a many month running thing now.
Oh yeah.
Like it was posted on the sign up sheet for a while. Well, it wasn't, because I was like, no one. I think I had messaged you of like,
yes,
hey, or you had messaged me, one or the other, of like, anytime you want to be on, just let me know. And I was like, oh yeah, just whatever episode. You're like, oh, just put your name in the sign up sheet. And I was like, oh, and I saw like a couple with like only one guest or maybe two guests and like stuff that I wanted to be on. And I was like, weird, the Disappeared doesn't have any guests. No one wants to talk about this amazing episode arc. And I was like, you know what? If it's you, I think you guys have been doing this for like 6 months at that point, and still no one had signed up. And I was like, nah, if no one's going to do it, I'm going to do it alone.
So that's kind of the running joke for any of the audio and people coming into the chat. Also, like, comment, subscribe if you're new to the channel. Thank you.
Why are you telling people like, comment, subscribe on Chase's account? This is weird.
That's fine. More publicity for me. That's great.
I mean, hey, you know. Oh my God.
But yeah, so tonight we're talking about and this is 100% correct. No one wants to talk about the sexiest Clone Wars arc of all time. Literally, nothing gets me like a little uncomfortable. I have to like check, make sure no one else is watching while I'm watching. No, sorry, no, absolutely not. Asajj Ventress and what's his name? Dude bro who likes Sublime, the Jedi.
Quinlan.
Quinlan
Quinlan.
Voss?
Quinlan? No, not nearly as sexy
Ooh, I don't
as Jar
know.
Jar and Julia. No way.
I
You
don't
may need to
way.
read
know.
that arc. There, it gets a little spicy.
No. Fish bird action is all I came to Star Wars for.
Oh my god.
But
Jesus.
yes, tonight we are talking about the Disappeared arc, part 1 and part 2. This is the arc where we have Mace Windu, Master Jedi Mace Windu, going with the ambassador of Naboo, Jar Jar Binks, to meet up with his old girlfriend, and an adventure ensues. So let me ask you guys this: how do you think Julia and Jar Jar met? Because it's not really brought up to us how it happened. So let's get the headcanons going.
I mean, let's just be real here. Knowing Jar Jar, he probably like stumbled into like a situation where she's in the same room, and she thought like, "Ooh, he's kind of cute," you know. Maybe I can have my way with him or something. I don't know. I just find it hilarious that Jar Jar, like, this is the way that they decide to bring in sex into Star Wars is through Jar Jar Binks.
Yes.
It's just incredible.
Harry Styles, how do you feel? What do you think?
Well, obviously, I gotta agree with this weirdo co-host that plagiarized your podcast and say they probably stumbled into each other on Naboo, similar to Qui-Gon, and was like, "Oh, we should have."
Oh my god.
So my headcanon goes a little bit deeper than this.
All right, here we go.
So
Here we
okay.
go.
So Jar Jar and Julia, right? They have this previous relationship. This is a big part of it. It is the tongue. We'll talk about the tongue in episode 2 with a certain phallic object. But no. So Jar Jar and Julia met when they were younger. And I don't believe we ever see like young Gungans in Star Wars.
You do in
we?
the episode with Cad Bane stealing the baby young Gungan.
Okay, because
in-
my headcanon is more so that Jar Jar Binks, when he was younger, more looked like a muscular Squidward, and Julia met up with him. I would say, yeah, on Naboo. Like, I think she's a well-traveled individual. You know, she's royalty. She probably goes to different planets, and you know, she sees Giga Chad Binks, and of course, and then he like, you know, they hit it off, and then the tongue. And no matter how he matured or how he ended up looking later in life, when it's like no matter what he looks like now, that tongue, I could never give up. So that's how I think they kind of figured it out.
Welcome to Pod Ones at Night with your host Chase.
The
Just
Smut
talking
the
about-
Smut Wands podcast.
This is gonna be either so great or so terrible.
But no, okay, let's jump into it. Let's jump into the episodes now. First,
Yeah.
before we jump into this,
We got to say R.I.P. We got one missing member.
we do have my co-host,
Oh,
Char Char J.
you're really going into this bit, aren't you?
I mean, I invited you guys here. This is really rude. If you want to do something like this, you should start your own podcast.
I think you'd be pretty successful at it.
Yeah, like let's not forget this. I invited you.
Okay.
But Charlie, my best friend in the whole world, Charlie Johnson.
Don't you mean Charlie D'Amelio?
D'Amelio.
That's his wife. I think that's legal.
All right.
He normally summarizes these episodes for me, but before we get into an episode summary, I'd like to point out that one of our astute guests just viewed this episode for the first time today. Harry Styles is a fake Star Wars fan.
Oh, wow.
And I'm actually curious, before we get into like the questions that I wrote for my podcast. Harry, you've skipped it over every single time. How did you feel about it now?
I mean, it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be on the level of Bombad Jedi or Mon Cala, so it was actually pretty.
But
It was pretty all right.
So the fact that you put Mon Cala,
Oh, it's so boring.
Mon Cala is bad, and I think it's worse because it's the start of a season.
Mhm.
It's
I
how season
guess.
4 kicks off. Like if it was in the middle, I'd be like, oh, this is an interesting thing. But this is like how you start off season 4. No, I think it's not bad, not good actually. But yeah, I agree. I when I first watched this episode arc, I was like, I enjoy this. This is fun. I've never been a Jar Jar hater, but he's never been my favorite. But like Jar Jar and Mace, I think is a great pairing. I watched it. I'm like, okay, I enjoy this. This is an arc I know people don't like. I see people not liking this arc. Like finding out people didn't like D Squad was like shocking to me.
this one's not going to be as shocking to you.
Well, like even in Rebels, like people like say like Iron Squadron's really bad. And I'm like, what? I like had a blast watching Iron Squadron.
Yeah, that's fair. You're a ship guy, which
That's
is not bad.
Well, there's no ships for. Oh no, there's actually a really cool ship in this one. The little bug ships in this are really cool.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I like this arc. But we'll get into that in a little bit later. I'm not Gilbert Gottfried, as Obi-Wan Kenobi pointed out. I can't even remember how the dude's voice sounds. This is my co-host Charlie's job.
Yeah.
But let's.
You gonna at least try Tom Kane?
Tom Kane, that's his name. Yeah, I could. No, I'm not trying Tom Kane. Mystery on Bardata, an oasis of peace during the Clone Wars. The galaxy-wide conflict now threatens the ancient ways of the Bardatan people, with their spiritual leaders mysteriously vanishing. The foundations of its order in the system are near collapse. In desperation, the Queen of Bardata, Sexy Julia, has called upon the Republic Senate with a puzzling request to help save her people from certain doom.
Oh
Great.
man.
Sorry, I can't even remember what Tom Kane sounds like half the time, and then also
it's tough.
I'm not doing Gilbert Gottfried.
No, I don't blame you.
That's not happening. But yeah, I think there's a lot to really like in this episode. I think there's lots of cool imagery. I think there's lots of cool Force lore. But the moral of this is, without darkness, there cannot be light. This to me reflects a lot of Star Wars in general. How do you guys feel about the moral, like the subtitle of moral of the story on this episode?
I mean, just look at the whole saga. Without darkness, there's not light. You know what I mean? I mean, if you want to talk about it from the 6 movies that we got before, I mean, even with the sequels, all 9 movies, like literally, it's without evil, there is no reason to have like the good side. You know what I mean? There always has to be a yin and yang in storytelling, you know? Without like, just like how Snoke says in The Last Jedi, when there's a power of the darkness, there is light to meet it. So there's always that balance of light and dark.
Yeah. What about you, Harry?
I mean,
if you put your name there, I didn't put that there. I want that to be known. I did not put that there.
Well, I mean, to steal my co-host's idea, literally took words out of my mouth, exactly word for word, bar for bar. I mean, like, it's like the Force in a nutshell. It's like this episode is just kind of like an allegory for like what's gonna happen in Revenge of the Sith. Of like, or people are disappearing, the darkness is coming, and like everything's gonna like destroy us all. So it's like that moral's already kind of established right there of like, oh, this is very similar to the Jedi versus the Sith, and like these like Margrettas versus these cultists. It's like it's already kind of establishing these themes right out of the gate.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think even like going outside of the Force, this is one of the things I did like about this episode is why I like something like The Village Bride so much, is like looking into the Force from the perspective of not a Jedi and not a Sith. And yeah, I mean, I think even just from a storytelling perspective of like without darkness there cannot be light. Like you don't have a story if there's nothing like bad to happen almost. With no
Yeah.
conflict, there's no story. So yeah, I think it's great.
I
But
mean, if you think about it, though, real quick, Chase, like thinking of just like the fiction genre in like, think of like Lord of the Rings. Think of like there's always a dark force that has to be combated with the light. And you notice that a lot of the stories that are told, especially in like Lord of the Rings, like they don't talk about the peacetime because that's boring and there's
Right.
nothing there. And it's very, very true in Star Wars as well, because I mean, we are getting stories of in between timelines, but there's not much conflict to really talk about.
Yeah.
As much.
I mean, like even with like the High Republic, you kind of it's like no,
Yeah.
we don't have the Sith come back to Jedi, but we've introduced like the Nile, this new big bad that is building itself up. But I think even like like Lord of the Rings, you have like Sauron and all of Mordor as the darkness. But like even if you look at like just like regular basic books, like there is an antagonist or a presence, and it can be like in some books it's like a love interest, in some books it's a employee figure and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's so important to storytelling. But let's jump into it. Like we got a couple questions, and I'll pose these questions to you guys, and I'll chime in. Keep it conversational. If this is your first podcast, if you need guidance, let me know. Laughter out of nervousness is normal. But yeah, this episode definitely highlights the fact that there are many planets where you have the Jedi. How do you think Palpatine played these planets to his interest? Because we see a lot of stuff going on with this planet that is definitely a lot of dark side corruption.
Yeah. Harry, you go first.
Well, I wouldn't. It's interesting because like they come out of the gate saying like this is the only world of peace, and like there's nothing really bad going on with them because they separated themselves from the Jedi until Mother Talzin and the dark side showed up and started taking their people, as the prophecy once said. So Palpatine playing interest was more of kind of pushing
coincidence, I would think.
I would say it's coincidental, but it's also not coincidental knowing Sidious. He's pushing the Jedi to get involved, kind of like pushing the hand of this prophecy to go into formation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree, Elenis. You guys are killing it right now. I'm really proud of you. But yeah, Luke, how do you feel about just like Palpatine's master plan and how he did all this?
To be honest, you don't see a lot of planets straight up say we don't like the Jedi. Like you don't see it a ton, especially in the Clone Wars. Like there's a lot of people in the Separatist part of the story that are just like, we don't like what the Jedi stand for, but they don't just outright say we don't like the Jedi, because they take our children, or supposedly take their children. Mm-hmm. And like it's so interesting to dive into that. What? Oh, Chase, you have to Chase, yeah.
I'm sorry, what do you want me to do? You want me to talk about my sponsor, Far Away Factory?
Yes, I want you to talk about your sponsor, Far Away Factory.
Because Brooke and I are besties, and I have my special limited edition There Are More of Us from Star Wars Celebration sticker. So please, anyone, if you want to support our good friend Brooke and make sure that Mr. Dazzler is being fed, to buy all of the merch from Brooke, because if Mr. Dazzler dies, we all die a little bit. Yeah. So you can find Brooke at Far Away Factory on Instagram and at their Etsy shop, and also more specifically, just go to the website farfarawayfactory.com for all your Star Wars, Marvel, everything needs: t-shirts, stickers, everything.
Nice. Transition. Kidding.
Yeah.
Why are you taking control of Chase's podcast?
I'm not.
This is kind of weird.
Can we really give a shout out to Mr. Dazzler?
Always shout out to Mr. Dazzler.
Shout out to Mr. Dazzler. The man, like we all thought he was a myth. Come to find out,
he's
not a myth. He's a legend, like a straight up legend. and it's
I can't wait.
just-
I can't wait to see Mr. Dazzler again. in
I
London.
know it's gonna be so much
So
fun.
good. So good.
But yeah.
But yeah, I
I
think
forgot to. I was in my spiel, and then
yeah.
Mrs.
Do what you
Dazzler.
gotta do.
I just find it interesting because we don't, like I said, we don't see that perspective of just straight up people hating the Jedi. So obviously Palpatine's probably looking at that like, interesting. A planet that doesn't like Jedi. I could definitely use that to my advantage. So I thought that was really interesting. Now like I said, we don't see a whole lot of other systems that just have this thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah, early on in the series, I think it's like season 1 or 2 with like the little like raccoon people, like the little village. They're like the super peaceful small critter people.
Oh yeah.
And like they are like, we want out of the war. We don't want anything to do with this. But they're very much pushed into the side of the Republic, and then learn to love all that stuff. But it's not until next season, you're right, that we do see like the Martez family that is like, nah, man, the Jedi are not where it's at. But I think more than anything, just the propaganda machine that is Palpatine and how effective it is. I could see this being very much throughout the galaxy. I think I always say like the propaganda machine that is Palpatine, if like goes into real life with a lot of people, like, you know, Anakin did nothing wrong. You know, Anakin and Darth Vader are not the same person. That's literally the Palpatine propaganda machine at work. It's crazy.
My God. That blasphemy that hit my For You page today. Wild.
The maturing.
Wild.
Yeah, it's.
Tell me you didn't watch any of the films or watch any of the extra content without telling me you didn't watch.
Just the movies. It's such an obvious, like, we go from the young aspirational child that has everything ahead of him to the greatest villain of all time. Like, where was the translation lost here? Like, what? Like, for so many people, that guy, whatever with the lightsaber, like, maturing. I've got a lightsaber. Whatever, dude. Go eat a turd.
I just think it's funny that I obviously he did that for clicks. Like, but the problem is that people actually think that.
Oh yeah,
and that's a scary part. And it's like, if you can't, like, I love the character of Anakin Skywalker. Do I think everything that he did was correct? Absolutely fucking not.
No,
like there were signs where he could have turned the other way, but he chose not to. He did not have the right to kill all those people. He chose to kill all those people.
Right.
You know what? It's making a choice. Not he had the right. He didn't have a right to do anything.
Yeah. I think with Anakin, and not to detract from the glory of Mace Windu and Jar Jar.
Yeah.
But no, like there are things in Anakin's story, like from the movies to the books to the Clone Wars, that I'm just like, I don't like the direction it went. But I do like Anakin as a character. I think he's a very interesting character. I like the transition. I mean, especially with Kenobi now, it makes so much sense. Really work for me. But yeah, like that. The story is great. The story is fantastic. It's the reason Star Wars is so popular is because of the story of Anakin to Darth Vader. That's one of the reasons it's so popular.
And his redemption.
Yeah, well. It's a great story, but the idea that he's like almost infallible and like basically godlike to a lot of people,
it's weird.
Like, it's
very icky.
I blame Dragon Ball Z for a lot of this.
Damn it, Goku! Why are you doing too many Kamehamehas? You bastard!
But yeah, again, not to distract from
sorry,
our buddies Mace and Jar Jar,
Minister Mace and Representative Banks.
How, and this is something that I really like I brought up the Village Bride, is like how does the Memorial's view of the Force differ from the Jedi's, and do you see any similarities between the two, or even differences between the two? Luke, let's start with you.
Harry,
do you have something to say?
Well, again, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier about the Village Bride. I also know that in the Legends and I think is it Legends and Legacy of Luke Skywalker, the short story books of like it shows how the Force is viewed from like more like an ocean, and like this arc shows more of it like disappearing and more of like a tragedy. And then I was about to say another series of books, but I can't. Spoilers.
Oh, are you
I'll
talking
jump
about the
over that
blue?
one.
You mean the Blue Boys?
Yeah, I'm talking about the Blue Boys.
Oh,
So
the
I'll
Blue
flip over
Boys.
that one and act like it didn't happen. And then this arc of like again, it's very interesting to show like what it's like the Force is perceived from other point of views. And again, I think it just builds this world and makes it more interesting of just like, oh, here's the Jedi and Sith, like because the way that they bring in spoiler alert, Mother Talzin on later on as like the kind of like, oh, I'm not like a traditional dark side user, I'm like a Force magic user, and like I think it just kind of rounds out this whole interesting angle of like other people's perspectives of the Force.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Luke, how do you feel? Let me know.
Let me know down the. Let me know
How
in the
you
comments.
doing today, Luke? The real
I think it's an interesting question, to be honest, because like Hereth was saying, especially in the High Republic, a lot of different cultures see the Force differently. With the Bardotans, it's very much just like the Force is the Force. It's like they kind of think about it similarly to the Jedi, but it's like they can't access it unless they're in a meditative state.
Mm.
Like you see Jar Jar and you see Julia doing their like little swan dance before, like, it's like they're courting or whatever.
It's the foreplay.
And yeah, it's the foreplay. It's the foreplay before the real dirty business though. Like this sticking anyway. But like the way she describes like the way that the Bardotans are disappearing and how similar it is to like Jedi making prophecies about things and then the Bardotans making prophecies about things. It's just they're intertwined in a way. But I think it's so funny how the Bardotans are like, no, screw you, Jedi. Like instantly when Mace Windu shows up, he's like, we did not ask you for you, Jedi. And it's like, and then Jar Jar, he's like, okay, you're cool, let's go.
Yeah,
come on.
I think there's really good.
Oh, great, of course.
You mean you don't dance for 3 days before you get to business?
Yeah, come on. You're obviously doing something wrong.
That's weird.
You don't kiss to meditate with each other to like be like, hey, I need to help you meditate.
But no, I
Not
think
with
there's a
that
lot of-
noise. I don't.
yeah,
What are you,
Harry? I'm concerned about
Machin?
you.
Yeah, Harry. Anyway, sorry. Go
But
ahead.
yeah, I think there's a lot of parallels, even just like to real world stuff of like, if we kind of look at like just religions around the world and how they have animosity towards each other, even though they kind of all believe roughly the same thing, give or take. And it's like if we have a universe where the Force is the all connecting thing, Force play.
Hey, you know who's good at Force play? Avar Chris and Elzar Man.
It's Stellan Geos. Don't forget
And
Stellan in that pick.
And Stellan.
I haven't gotten there. I haven't gotten to the dirty part of Rising Storm yet. Yeah, that book's not doing it for me, Luke. I'm sorry.
Is it really? Is it really not
Really
doing
not.
it?
I've tried. I've like.
How
I've
many
got
times have you picked it up?
I haven't.
put it back
I haven't
down?
picked it up in a while.
I'd say give it a chance.
I liked Light of the Jedi.
Okay.
The first half of Light of Jedi is my favorite Star Wars writing, like by far.
A lot of people find it slow
and that
which
book
is
starts off with a literal bang.
yeah.
No, the Hetzel incident, like I was like, this is amazing. This is so well written. Love it. But we'll have I'll have a High Republic episode soon. I'll think about inviting you guys.
Okay, sounds good.
But yeah, no, I think, and again, this is my favorite thing to explore. It's definitely been explored in the expanded universe of like civilizations that are in tune with the Force, but not Jedi, not Sith. And this is like another one. If it's just like the Bardotans are so set in how they think the Force works, and how they connect with it and how they interact with it, and to have that outside faction almost basically say, no, we are actually the Force users, we're the Jedi, and it's like, no, we have it all figured out, you don't need to tell us what to do. I totally get where they're coming from, I don't think it's right on either end, but
Mhm.
no, it's got a lot of real world parallels. So I do like.
What in Legends, what other civilizations are there?
There's
Because I'm not a
stuff.
big Legends person.
There's stuff in the
I
Darth
don't
Bane
know.
trilogy that talks about it when he comes to a village that's like more or less disconnected. There's stuff in some of the like a lot of the old Republic stuff where it's like things like disconnected more so like just like civilizations that they don't have light speed capabilities yet and stuff like that where
Hmm.
they'll go and they people, the Sith lords interact with these cultures and it's very interesting to see. You even have like cultures that like you have like the Revankists, which is weird. It's the cultists around Revan. They're not Jedi. They're not Sith. They worship Darth Revan.
So kind of like the Acolytes of the Beyond and the Aftermath trilogy.
Yeah, very much like the Sith cultists of Exegol.
Oh yeah, right.
Yes.
Skywalker, yeah.
Yeah, so you get some of that in the Old Republic stuff. So it's very interesting, and it's always piqued my interest of like who's out there that knows about the Force, uses the Force, but it's different. I think even the Night Sisters are a really really awesome example, very much
Yeah.
in that like cloud of dark side energy, but they're very different.
Yeah. They use the Force differently than
Yeah.
like the Sith or the Jedi do. It's in like I think we discussed that in what arc was that? Season.
There's a handful of
3.
Night Sister
Was it the
arcs.
Night Sister trilogy or was it
Yeah, I know. It was when Grievous attacked.
the Massacre episode?
Yeah, the
Oh,
massacre episode. Because it's like their use of the Force is basically magic.
yeah, that was a great episode. I'm so glad you guys watched it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for
It's a great
supporting.
episode.
Thanks for supporting the Podwants podcast. But the last question for this episode is going to be: how do you think that Star Wars marries the genres of fantasy, science fiction, westerns, and honestly other when we look into like samurai stuff like so seamlessly? Do you think there's something that Star Wars does exceptionally well?
So I mean, are you asking like if there was a genre specific that Star Wars does well?
What do you think Star Wars is best at? Like when they are focusing on that type of storytelling or that like micro genre that they're trying to dive into, when do you think it's the best?
I would say honestly, fantasy and westerns. I know everybody wants to put Star Wars in sci-fi, but when I think sci-fi, I honestly think like Battlestar Galactica or Star Trek or like some of these other franchises. I would put Star Wars in the fantasy category
Oh yeah, for sure.
because of just like the way they use the Force. It's very much like magic. There's not much magic in Star Trek. There's not magic in like Terminator or anything like that. I would say that's like more sci-fi fiction. But I mean, look at Book of Boba Fett, classic Star Wars Western.
Yep.
Look at Han Solo. I would say that's a Western as well, in some degree. But I think the one that I think the genre that it does the most well is fantasy, because I mean it's a great way of world building. And with sci-fi specifically, there's not a ton of world building. It's very on a smaller scale.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Harry, how do you feel about it?
Well, I would have to also agree with my co-host of our
of our non-existent podcast.
podcast. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
That's cute. You guys talk a lot on your own.
Well, I think Star Wars is at its best when it takes elements of different genres and like tries to meld it into something new. That's what Star Wars 1977 went out to achieve. It's like you said, it's like fantasy with westerns mixed with like samurais mixed with like my thought just went out the brain.
I mean Kurosawa.
Yeah, Kurosawa is like
seven
Seven
Samurai.
Samurai. With like
Yeah.
the 1940 serials of like Lucas like watched as a
Flash
child.
John.
Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon. Yeah.
Like how Flash Gordon like combined into that, and that's when Star Wars is at its best, when it's just taking all these major elements and just throwing it into a pot and seeing what works. Again, like I would say this arc would fall more into, I would say like honestly, I would say Western mixed with Fantasy, yeah, I would say Western and fantasy is this arc because I was gonna say samurai culture a little bit with like the Bungardens and like how they view the Force and like how they connect into it, but I would say Westerns because of how this arc ends. It's very much like a Western.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I would agree, and I mean, I would say fantasy more because it's like you learn about the Barkatans like culture and learning how they use the Force and all of that. It's just incredible to see what like how Star Wars is able to branch into different genres and just do so well.
Yep. I agree because for me, like with the Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, like that very leading into the Western vibe. Like the duel between Cad Bane and Boba Fett, like that was a moment for me, even like not being super attached to Cad Bane, but like at that point I had seen all of Clone Wars and I was like, this is an awesome scene. I really love that duel. But there's the episode when we meet Cara Dune and the Mandalorian is like straight out of Firefly, which is a really good like science fiction Western where they're still using like revolvers and stuff like that. So I love that. And all the Western stuff is based off of samurai stuff anyways. Like the traditional gun duel is just the samurai duel in its own style. So I think like even Vader and Obi-Wan on the Death Star, like that is a
very much so.
gun-slinger duel.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I
Just,
mean,
they replaced the revolver with a laser sword, and it works so well. But recently with Rogue One, and I think coming up with Andor,
oh yeah,
the war story, like it's obviously Star Wars, and we have these like scenes with big battles, but we don't really get that like band of brothers like story until Rogue One, and I think Andor is going to very much be this is wartime. I think it's going to hit very hard. I think you're going to get some psychological stuff from people like, what are we the good guys even? Like, what are we doing?
I would say even though like there's elements of that in Clone Wars, I think Rogue One just took the elements of Clone Wars and turned it up to 100.
Yeah, because I think Umbara is a good warlike story.
I agree. A lot of the
Siege of Mandalore, very like, especially because it's like you look from the Republic standpoint, and they're like, well, should we be invading Mandalore? It's kind of an inner affair, but Maul's there. All right, fuck it, let's do it. And
I think the clone stuff in general within the Clone Wars really hits on that.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
think the Clone Wars episode of Rebels as well, when Rex goes and then has to deal with the Separatists one last time, it definitely has that like. What the quote is like, "War leaves scars you can't see."
Yes.
And so I think them leaning into those stories has been really interesting because it's like I said, we've had the battles that are like very fantastical and exciting, but I think, oh, hi, Chewie. Look at that! Oh my goodness.
Well, sorry, this is our mascot for our podcast.
That's a good mascot. I
know,
I
right?
appreciate it. I would love to recruit your mascot for my podcast, the Pod
Sorry,
Ones
Chewie.
podcast.
Sorry, Chewie. You can only be part of one podcast. Right, Papa?
Yeah, he's a part of the Podawans podcast. It's very different, you know.
Very different. Not as good. But yeah, no, I totally agree with all those. And with that, let's dive into part 2. And part 2, I think, is my more enjoyed episode. Carter's my mascot.
Car2D2, gotta love him.
I miss Car2D2.
So do I. So do I. I'm glad he is where he's at. I hope he comes back. Oh yeah, he pronounces it the Pods Ones.
Pods Ones. That's another podcast started by Brian. It isn't professional, but the dog was cute.
Yeah.
So it does get.
It would have been like an ugly dog.
If it was like a pug, like I would have kicked you out. Sorry. But yeah, let's move on to the other half of this arc. It's just a 2-episode arc, and I do think I think both episodes are great. But I do think the second episode is better. And the moral of this is wisdom is born in fools as well as wise men. I like this moral. I like this as a quote in general. Because I think for me, I interpret it as like no one is born wise and no one is born smart. We all get there and it's a path. How do you feel about it, Harry?
I mean, again, I think that perfectly sums up. Like, I think it's because like if we're gonna like look at this from an analytical level, it seems like they're talking about Jar Jar and Mace. Because again, wisdom is because Jar Jar ends up in the end, spoiler alert, saving everyone. So that wisdom was embedded in him, and Mace thinking he's the wise man in this group, thinking he's going to come save the day. In reality, it's Jar Jar.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Because like I think in this episode you see Jar Jar definitely interfering and messing up, but at the same time he'll turn that right. I mean, he does this in the episode 1 of the movie as well, where it's turning his clumsiness to his advantage and having the heart in the right place and doing the right thing. And he eventually just grabs the big gun, the gun arm, and just like starts blowing everything away. It's like, yeah, he helped. Luke, how do you feel about the quote?
I mean, it heavily hints at the quote, just because you have the ability to speak does not give you intelligence. Now get out of here. And like that's something that fans, I feel like, have stuck with Jar Jar, is that saying. And I don't like necessarily think that's fair to him because he does have really good character traits. Now, is he very clumsy? Yes. Is he supposed to be for children? Absolutely. But a lot of the arcs that he is in the Clone Wars give him more depth to his character.
Yep, I agree.
And I think I think that's very, very important because people just like to use him as a scapegoat to why the prequel trilogy wasn't good. And that's not fair because he really didn't do much after episode 1.
Right.
Like he didn't have any lines except for "squeeze me" in episode 3, and he had that small little talk with Anakin and Obi-Wan in the beginning of Attack of the Clones. Then he has the speech, and that's it.
No, you also get the scene of how would Senator Amidala do in this situation?
And he looks over and he see Masamita just literally goes,
"Hey, Jar Jar,
hey,
it's your job.
Hey, you. Hey, you. Palpatine's gonna manipulate you into doing this, so be ready." But like it's so sad to see how much he gets like shit on because he just genuinely does the right thing in the goodness of his heart. At the end of the day, Jar Jar Binks does what he believes is right.
Right.
And I think that's something that people miss.
Yeah. He's got a good heart. If you've seen Resistance, Niku is a lot like Jar Jar in a lot of ways.
Yes, he
and
is.
Niku is the person all he ever wants to do is the right thing, and he sometimes screws it up. And his character trait is he doesn't understand sarcasm. He doesn't really understand humor. So if you tell him to do something jokingly, he'll do it, and that sometimes screws up the plan. But he'll always find a way to fix it. And I think Jar Jar is in the same way, is that even if he screws up, he knows he screwed up, and he does whatever he can to fix it. And we really see that a lot in this arc, because he does screw up a little bit, but he does his best to fix it. And let me pull up the plot summary.
On Niku. Chase.
I'll always talk about Niku.
I think I finished because Harry Styles and Charlie Johnson were like giving me a hard time for not finishing Resistance. So I watched Resistance in like 2 days
because you're
just so that these people don't have anything above me, because that's just who I am. I'm that narcissist, you know.
And guess what? It worked.
And like, when you said that about Niku, it's spot on. I would say he's more of a mixture between C-3PO and Jar Jar.
Mm-hmm.
Because the sarcasm, for sure, C-3PO doesn't understand sarcasm at all. And I feel like that's like the biggest thing for Niku, like you were saying, is that Kaz will say something jokingly and he'll be like, "Okay, I will go do that now."
Like,
and it's like,
I'm going to go talk to the First Order Stormtrooper.
No, don't do that. Don't
Hey,
do that.
Hi,
And
First
then-
Order Stormtrooper. How you doing?
No, and then Jar Jar would be like, or when Anakin's in episode 1 is like, I need something. He goes down to pick it up and he shocks himself.
Yep.
And then he has a numb face. It's interesting to see how intertwined a lot of these characters and how much like the writers and the directors and the producers have learned from like these past characters.
Yeah.
Kind of picking and choosing what works for some characters and building on new characters with those character traits.
Yep. No, I'm glad you watched Resistance. How did you like Resistance overall?
Storytelling was good. Could probably use a third season.
Yes.
Yes. Let's
it's-
go.
It's not my favorite. It's probably still last on my rankings
Mhm.
because there's a lot of good shows out there. And I didn't quite connect with the story of Resistance because I'm not like a spaceship oriented person. I feel like that's perfect for like Chase or Kels or Demolanta or it. I will say this. It's not last because I didn't like it. It's last because there's so many other good things.
Right. We're not starved for good Star Wars shows.
No.
It definitely hits the right thing. I think of all of the shows, it has the most heart.
I would agree. I would agree with that.
I think the way that story is presented and the way it is told to you, it seems like the people who made this really, really cared and wanted. Like, there's so many small details, even with the Ace pilots. Like, all those ships are just like heavily modified versions of all the ships you've grown to love. Just like the characters, kind of like you said, the characters are representations and modifications of existing characters. And Kaz is just the sweetest, most genuine person. I love him.
To me, it feels like a love letter to all of Star Wars in general, like canon-wise, because you get references to like the Battle of Jakku. Like you said, the ships are all modified different members of the ships. Like there's so many deep cut references that you can find in that show.
I mean, the head honcho of the Colossus was an Imperial,
Yeah.
like a high-ranking Imperial.
The Doza is great. The family is great. Like the families involved in Resistance are all awesome. But yeah,
And we will and we'll be covering it on our podcast, the
Padawan
Pod-
podcast.
Pod-
you should.
I don't even know where the bit begins and ends anymore.
What bit?
What were you talking about, Luke?
Anyways, let's steer our focus back to. I mean, you guys have been great guests, but you're very distracting. If you need pointers on hosting a podcast,
Yeah,
you really need to get
definitely.
this podcast back on track.
Definitely. Yeah.
So let me go ahead and read the plot summary for this one. It starts with Lost. Queen Julia of the planet Bardata has been abducted. If Representative Jar Jar Binks and the Jedi Master Mace Windu cannot find the missing queen in 3 rotations, a sinister prophecy will be fulfilled. The bloodthirsty Frangal cult will take over the Bardatan government, and its planetary system will be overwhelmed with chaos, death, and destruction. Very ominous for this arc. It's an arc that I think starts lighthearted and goes into a very dark place very quickly.
But Chase,
Yeah.
I think for this podcast, you should have a person that like is critiquing your summaries. I think
My
that would be a
co-host
good idea.
died on a plane.
Damn it, tragic.
Rest in peace, Charlie
Charlie
D'Amelio.
D'Amelio.
Charlie D'Amelio.
All of her followers are going to be so sad.
Oh God.
All
30,
million of her
12
followers.
million
Oh
of
man.
Charlie's followers. But yeah,
Oh,
let's start with the
agreed.
question. Yeah, Mace Windu deserved to say motherfucker. I agree.
I agree too.
I think the moment that Jar Jar bumps into him and knocks his lightsaber out, he had the right to look back and go, motherfucker.
Yeah.
As like the 2 giant beasts are like looming over him.
Yeah.
That's Mace's one.
Or I was thinking when Jar Jar stumbles into the storm, like the stone giant, that he's like looks at him like motherfucker.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask like where and like where's the most appropriate in the Skywalker saga for motherfucker, but I also think it's a
Oh,
Mace Windu moment.
oh,
I have one
That's a-
immediately, and
I already
That's a
have one
good-
immediately.
that's a
Chase, are we thinking the same thing?
that's
I
a
think
good
so.
one. That is a honestly,
There's two.
if it no, there's three. There's three really good ones. All of them involve getting limbs cut off. So I think Mace Windu for sure because you have to have Samuel L. Jackson say motherfucker, like he's like after he's done like he just looks over and goes mother, and then he shocks him and then sends him out.
Okay, that's my
That's
very
what-
first one.
Yeah,
is
that's
Mace
my first
Windu
one.
when he realized Anakin's turn, just look at Anakin, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Snoke.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I wasn't thinking of that one.
Getting
That one
ready
worked
to get
too.
cut in half. And I guess if I had an original trilogy one, it would be Palpatine being lifted up by Darth Vader.
All I could think about is the oh my god, he's staring. He's really getting into my eyes, man. You're really reading into my soul. Hey, what? And then just getting dropped in or thrown in. I would say for original trilogy, ironically, would be I Am Your Father. And Luke just jumping off says, motherfucker.
I thought you were gonna go with C-3PO. I'm standing here in pieces, you motherfucker.
Oh yeah. Oh, that would have worked too. God damn. That would be hilarious to hear Anthony Daniels saying motherfucker.
A good headcanon to have is that Chewie is only ever saying motherfucker.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. When he's like banging when he's I think it's an Empire when he's when Han goes when Leia goes no light speed and he's like motherfucker just work and just
I think in A New Hope when Luke's got the shackles going on. Chewie's like,
no
this
way
motherfucker.
motherfucker no way motherfucker. Oh,
I was gonna say I have one more to add into the thought. I thought you were gonna go with the sequel trilogy. If you're gonna go for another Mace Windu one, it would be on the Be With Me, motherfucker. Throw lightning back in his face.
no.
Lightning in his
Child,
face.
you're doing this wrong. You got to motherfucker it, and then it'll work.
God. Thank you, Mace Windu. Thank
Yeah.
you, Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson. I honestly, I think I've got one. I think I've got one more that would fit. Chat. Well, Chase, you should ask the chat to.
Yeah,
chime
chat.
in.
Where's the best place to put motherfucker in Star Wars? The other Mace one is when Palpatine says, "I am the Senate," and Mace goes, "Not yet, motherfucker."
I think one that could be for Solo. L3.
Yes.
When they're in the fighting pits, and she's like, "You don't have to do this." And then the guy comes up to her and she goes, "It would be you motherfucker," just like pointing her finger. That would be a perfect one as well.
I think another good one would be K2SO is a good candidate to throw in a few during Rogue One.
Oh yeah.
He's a sweary droid. But yeah, back to our buddies, Mason Jar Jar. First question of this arc: had another Jedi been sent instead of Mace, what do you think the outcome would have been? Different or the same?
Oh Jesus! Like first thing comes to mind if you send either Anakin or Obi-Wan.
I love how I was thinking Anakin too.
Like if you send Anakin or Obi-Wan's like they're kind of thinking the same way Mace as Mace, but they still have that they have these memories and they have these experiences with Jar Jar, and they kind of are like I think that they would kind of take a step back and be like, hey, let's let him do these things because he has really proven himself. Let's give him a chance, you know?
I definitely see Anakin like going along with Jar Jar of it's just like I am in uncharted territory. I want to Jar Jar's not that bad. I know Jar Jar. He's got this. Obi-Wan would have a similar reaction. But like would want to rein in Jar Jar more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the other I think Yoda would be great. Like a Yoda
Jesus.
and Jar Jar. everything's a lesson.
Yeah.
I was gonna say with Anakin, I thought you were gonna go the route of Anakin, like even though he has a relationship with Jar Jar, he would just get so like impatient. He would just like threaten him at one point.
God damn it, Jar Jar. Get this over with. Stop making kissy face with Queen Julia. We gotta find these people and get back.
And Jar Jar just looked at Anakin like, "Aren't you the worst kept secret in the galaxy?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Mace is the perfect person, and that kind of goes into the next question: is why do you think the writers paired up Jar Jar and Mace? They are so different. They are
absolutely
so
different.
unbelievably different characters. Like as far as our protagonists or our cloud of protagonists go within the Star Wars prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars, Mace is such a stoic, very. I want to hear say that. Motherfucker.
Eli, what is this word, motherfucker?
Thrawn. I guess another one is when the Purgles show up.
Oh yes, it's after. So he heard the word said in the Thrawn trilogy, and he turned to Eli and he's like, "What is this motherfucker they speak of?" And then Eli explains it, and then he uses it in the correct connotation. Oh, that'd be funny as hell.
It would be Eli Vento. What does this motherfucker term mean?
Yeah.
The smartest stupid boy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, like Plo Koon and Jar Jar would have been funny too. I feel like Plo Koon would he would want to go with his Plos bros. So we would have it would be a very different arc.
Yeah.
It'd be a very much more militaristic arc. I feel every time I think about Plo Koon, it is very militaristic.
Yeah.
He's all about his Plos bros. But no, like I do think that Jar Jar and Mace are perfect for each other in this episode, because we get again, Mace Windu is a stoic. I don't want to say by the books Jedi, but he's when I think of like what makes a Jedi, there's like 3 people that really come to mind. 4: Mace Windu, Yoda, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Stella Geos. To me are like they are the Jedi.
Not Obi-Wan?
No.
Wow. That's kind of a hot take.
No.
Because a lot of people well,
I'm with Chase on this one.
So a lot of people put Obi-Wan as like the perfect Jedi.
I would
disagree
put
with.
Qui-Gon over Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I would see that. Yeah.
I think that Obi-Wan struggles, and I think the reason, because I think there's always the discussion of like, what if Qui-Gon would have trained Anakin? What if Qui-Gon would have lived? Like, we would have had a different story. Not that I'm saying it's Obi-Wan's fault.
Hold on, I'll put it. There you go.
Why'd you put that on screen?
Eli, he just called that man a cunt. Could you please? Well, you see, we're on some backwater worlds. See you next Tuesday.
Oh,
it's a real mean turn.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I will have to look at a painting of this. See you next Tuesday.
Would we call talking a cunt?
No, it'd be Krennic.
Oh, yeah, Krennic. Mark Thompson, I need my money.
Anyway.
No. Okay, Obi-Wan, and I think Clone Wars does a really good job with this with Satine.
Chase, look at the chat. I'm not gonna bring it up. Just look at the chat.
I'm looking.
Anyway,
Eli, this man.
No. Chase will no longer have a
Chris, does blue skin make it okay?
No.
This is an audio production brought to you by Chase.
Yeah, man, this podcast is fire. I am so proud of myself.
Oh my god.
Uh,
Anyway,
anyways, Obi-Wan is a great Jedi. I don't look at him as the Jedi. Blue Lives Matter.
oh my god. We're not taking that stance.
Just the sentency matters.
Hey, the Wands podcast does not stand with that.
Yeah.
Your new podcast will be all about the Chis Ascendancy, and you can call it Blue Lives Matter.
Oh Jesus, that's a terrible idea. That's a terrible idea. Anyway, back to
I think it's not my podcast. I think we've established the Jedi. I think Mace and Jar Jar are a great pairing. But kind of going into the last half of the episode, as we've been horribly derailed by the Star Wars lawyer, Mace comments that magic is only illusion, forgetting that to many, the Force seems like an illusion. How are the ideas of magic and the Force both similar and different? How are they explored? And I have a lot to talk about on this one, but I'll let Harry, you go first.
Well, I brought this up earlier in the podcast of Mother Talzin pointing out that, like, I'm no Jedi, I'm no Sith. I use dark magic. And I feel like that ties in very well with, like, this. It's kind of like this dark side Force ability, but it's not really the dark side of the Force. It's kind of like this weird, uncharted territory. Try saying that 20 million times faster.
Shout out to Cloud City Conversations. How are you doing, my friend? Thank you for tuning into my podcast, the Pod Ones podcast. But no, Harry, I agree. I think Mother Talzin and the Night Sisters are a good representation of this like nebulous thing that is the Force, and we don't have to go into like a binary structure into following it.
Which, not to plug our own podcast, but you should probably pay attention to when we cover Son of Dathomir, because I think I find that interesting with this arc and context of why Palpatine views Mother Talzin as a threat to his empire. Like, he views her as like, this person will destroy us all. We got to take her out. So
For sure.
It's also because he is deathly afraid of strong women.
That's also true.
Yes.
Micro penis energy right there.
Yeah, he's scared of Mir and Rey and Mother Talzin
and Padme.
The only person that could actually take down Palpatine was a strong woman. Very much like Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. I am no man.
No man.
That is such a good
I am no man.
But yeah, no. Luke, how do you feel like this very much, again, this nebulous version of the Force? You know, Mace says magic is only illusion, but I think it's almost problematic in a way.
It is sort of because there are a lot of cultures that look at the Force and they're like I like even think about what Han Solo says at the
You just read it.
Yeah, my chat button's not working. It's so strange on my podcast, but yeah, there we go. It's working. Scared of strong women, just like Luke and Hereth.
I don't know.
I am dating a strong woman. What are you talking about?
I don't know.
Out of fear.
I don't know who this Hereth person is. I'm clearly Harry Styles.
I don't
critical boy band fame.
I don't understand. I am dating a strong, independent woman. I don't get this. Why would I be scared of a strong woman?
You're scared she's going to beat you up.
Never mind. Anyway, it's just interesting. Because I mean, look at Haja, for example. God,
I love Haja.
Damn it.
Why is Charlie D'Amelio scared of strong women? That would make no sense.
Did Lucas freeze?
No.
Okay.
That was really good, though.
That was good. I thought you were frozen. The fear is always there. Char isn't here. Yeah. Yeah.
That one's funny.
He knew we were going to be talking about Julia, the strongest woman in Star Wars.
Oh man. No, after I'm trying to get my thoughts out. It's like Haja when he uses the Force to manipulate people.
Mhm.
I mean that's like an illusion. A lot of people either manipulate the Force or use the Force in different ways. I think it's very, very interesting to how Mother Talzin is able to like manipulate a whole group just by using her magic.
Mhm.
It's insanity. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that it's like a knock against the people of those planets, but in the original movie, Obi-Wan says the Force has a lot of power over the weak-minded.
Yes.
And I think this episode really plays into stuff like the Village Bride of exploring these different cultures that do have a connection to the Force.
Not
And
like your favorite arc Mortis.
yeah,
I was
so
funny on
my podcast, we skipped that arc because it was so bad and we didn't want to bore the audience.
Hey, Chase,
What's up?
check your phone.
Oh God.
No, you're gonna need this for later.
Oh, I already got this. Thank you.
You did?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep.
I know how to operate a podcast, Luke.
Yeah,
I've been
yeah.
doing
Hey,
it for years.
Hey, I was just trying to help you out.
I appreciate it, but like, stop trying to steal my podcast. like I said, if you want to do it, you should start your own.
Oh,
It's not
goodness.
hard.
Anyway.
But yeah, no, this is again one of my favorite things, and I don't mean this again against like anyone, like against Mace, but like I think this is like when he says magic is only an illusion in reference to Mother Talzin, who is using the Force just in a different way. I think we are starting to see the fall of the Jedi, the fall of the Republic, where he is so wrapped up into how he is correct, the Jedi are correct, the Republic is correct. Man, the chat is so right. I wish my chat button was working. Backseat hosting.
Yeah, Luke, what's up with that? Why you try to take over Chase's podcast? My
invited
colleague
you
and friend.
here.
I am having like imposter syndrome.
You should.
Literally.
You should.
I am having imposter syndrome.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
weird.
if you want to be on a podcast, Luke, go talk to Cloud City Conversations. They're glad to have you.
Anyway.
But no, I think there's a lot going on at the end of this arc. I think this arc in general is fun. I don't think it's one of the strongest arcs. I think it is definitely an overhated and overlooked arc.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, this chat on fire tonight.
Hey, if you're in the chat, can you at least like the stream for Chase? He needs to feed his cats. Okay.
My cats are doing just fine.
He needs to feed his cat so he can get it on the recommendation page because Chase
Mike-
needs more subs. He needs
Yeah,
to get
Chase
to 1,000
needs
subs so he can
yeah.
start his Patreon.
Yeah.
Where he can start shooting out his
If you subscribe to my Patreon, I guarantee you will get feed pics.
What kind of feet pics, Chase?
Any kind you want. If you go follow my friend Star Wars Theory's feed pics account, you'll be in for a treat.
Oh, good God. Anyway.
Anyways, do you guys have any other closing thoughts on this arc, on this episode? Harry, this is your first time watching it.
Yes, it is. Like I said earlier in the beginning of the podcast, I skipped it every single time. Now I probably won't because I thought it was going to be worse than it was.
Mhm.
So, again, I'll write that later. I'm not trying to backseat host your podcast like my boy Luke over here.
My StreamYards is glitching out. We'll get to the rankings when we get to the rankings.
Yeah, Luke.
Why
are you trying to backseat host Chase here? Get your own podcast.
I don't know. I think he's
Padawan
hacking into my
Podcast.
StreamYards account or something. Kind of creepy. But no, like. So let me ask you this: have you now finally seen the Clone Wars in its entirety?
Yes, I have.
Okay, good. So I'm not the last person.
I mean, I'm no longer a fake Clone Wars fan.
You're no longer a fake Clone Wars fan. You now know how bad it is.
Now
Hey,
I
Chase.
understand why you didn't want me on your podcast.
Chase, can you highlight Cloud City Conversations?
I'll
I
please,
I don't
please.
think you want me on that conversation.
Okay,
Because that conversation would go one-sided.
is this happening?
No,
Oh,
no, because we are above the childish.
I would bring him on a podcast. I would love to. And I'd be like, hey man, I found this Instagram account. Can you explain it?
Yeah.
But no, yeah, it's again, I think it's not the best arc. It's not D Squad. And I
fair.
think there's other arcs in there as well. I think the Yoda arc coming up that we will be talking about very soon after we talk about the Sifo Dyas arc, also really good. Man, my chat. I'm so proud of my chat. But yeah, no, I think it's good. But let me get into real quick. We have 3 interesting facts about this arc.
Rest in peace, Charlie D'Amelio. May you
Charlie
be remembered on
D'Amelio
that
died
Charlie D'Amelio.
tragically in a plane crash and cannot read 3 interesting facts. We all know Charlie D'Amelio built her entire platform on 3 interesting facts on TikTok. I remember when she used to go, "What's up, guys? 3 interesting facts about the Clone Wars."
What's up, guys? 3 interesting facts you didn't know about a Clone
Fact
Wars.
number 1: buy my drink at Dunkin' Donuts. I miss Charlie D'Amelio so much. 3 interesting facts about the Disappeared arc. Fact 1: Adi Gallia's absence at the beginning of Disappeared Part 1, where Chancellor Palpatine contacts the Jedi Council about the Bardotan people. You can see a vacant seat on the Jedi Council between Oppo Rancis, the sexiest snake, and Sassy Tin. This seat was only once held by Adi Gallia, the Jedi Master who died in Season 5 from Savage Opress. So they did not replace Adi Gallia. Very interesting. Thanks, Charlie D'Amelio. Fact number 2, a callback to Qui-Gon Jinn. Mace Windu advising Jar Jar not to touch anything aboard the shuttle echoes Qui-Gon Jinn's same instructions to Binks when they entered Watto's shop in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. He also touches like the Guardians and stuff a lot, which causes the domino effect of all the Guardians, and subsequently destroys all the Guardians in a very similar way. Fact number 3, Bardotan's inspiration. The planet Bardate is named after the French actress Brigitte Bardot. Brigitte Bardot. I know how to read French, Charlie D'Amelio. Jeez. Didn't need to put the pronunciation in there. I'm cultured. But yeah, those were Charlie D'Amelio's absolutely breathtaking, juicy, life-changing 3 interesting facts. Rest in peace, Charlie D'Amelio.
May you be remembered. I'll drink your Dunkin' Donuts drink to remember you.
I'm sure your sister Dixie will, I don't know, start a Star Trek thing and get half as famous. But yeah, let me bring up the rankings here for the episode. I'm very curious. Luke, where would you put this episode or this arc?
Jedi Knight.
Jedi Knight?
Used to be lower.
Yeah.
It's not one that I will watch every single time, but it gave me a great perspective on Jar Jar that I didn't know that I needed, and I think that's the most important part.
Okay, that's fair. Harry?
I'll go the same as Luke. I was as I was watching it, I was like, this is all right. This is a Jedi Knight arc. It's middle of the pack, not its worst, but still Mon Cala. I will fight you on that, Luke.
I wouldn't say Mon Cala is the worst, but it's definitely Padawan. And yes, I think a lot of people are Grandmaster. I am going to go with the chat, Grandmaster on this arc. I think we get a lot of stuff. And I'll say this, and I'll pose this as a question to you two, as like the final question. With stuff like Kenobi coming out, we're getting a lot of extra context to a lot of stuff. As we're getting more, do you see stuff like this, even with something like the Disappeared arc? Are you seeing stuff that you've now seen later on that when you go back to this, it makes this episode better? And if you have any examples, let me know.
Specifically, all of Kenobi making A New Hope that much more emotional damage.
Yes, watching A New
particular.
Hope after Kenobi is awful.
Oh my god, it is wrenching. Wrenching.
Only Obi-Wan Kenobi, or my only hope is like the whole speech is heartbreaking. The whole message is absolutely heartbreaking. I know I brought it up a lot in this episode, but stuff like watching The Village Bride, and then watching the Disappeared arc made this arc a lot more interesting to me. Also, Jedi Fallen Order makes this arc way more interesting. With
Yeah,
the stuff-
because of I can't remember the master that
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like the Evo
Ran sisters.
Candaria. No, the Evo Candaria.
Yeah. And well, I can't remember the Jedi Master who had BD before Cal did. What's his
Oh,
name?
he's the one on Bogano. I can't remember his name either.
Yeah, I can't think of it either.
Um,
But yeah, I would just say that Ina
Cordova. Yep.
Yep, Ina Cordova. And seeing like Jedi just aren't all warriors. Some of them are. Oh,
Yep.
stop it.
And Chris brings up, he brought up Terran Malicos.
Yes.
I think Terran Malicos is, very much the opposite of Mace Windu in this arc. And then I think having that is a huge, huge change of pace and like seeing how the Night Sisters are perceived and what has happened to them and what's happened to Mother Talzin. I think it changes this arc a lot.
Maybe if Terran Malicos had Jar Jar Binks with him during Order 66 and during Dathomir, maybe he wouldn't have fallen.
Maybe. I think you're right. No, that dude's just as Thrawn would say, he's a cunt.
Jesus Christ.
Uh,
All right. All right. That last C word. All right. That's a good place to end. All right.
Why are you ending my podcast?
I am now taking back over of the podcast.
Wait, what do you mean
Chase,
taking back over?
Chase,
Chase has always been the owner here.
Chase, thank you for going with this bit. And
What
What
bit?
bit are you talking about,
and
Luke?
hosting it.
Like,
All right.
this is
All right,
this
you
is
guys
the
can stop
podcast.
now. But Chase, thanks for playing along. Thanks for
I'm
doing this.
very confused as what's going on right now.
Oh my
I don't even know
God.
anymore. What's going on?
But Chase,
Yes.
where can the good people follow you?
You can follow me at Forwardintotheblack on TikTok, on basically TikTok. I have a Twitch, an Instagram, and a Twitter that I never use. You can also find me on Rogue Council with Xanatos1138 or David. And I also have this amazing podcast here, Podwan's Podcast, every Thursday at 8:30 Eastern time, because that's the only time zone that matters. Anyone else can go eat a fart.
All right, time to-
All right.
Luke, where can we find you on the internet?
Shut up. Real quick. So some housekeeping. From our watch along on Stream Lounge. We are still doing that. If you guys want to go check us out, go download the Stream Lounge app on it's only on desktop. So you can only do it on your laptop or on your desktop. Go download that. Come join us for part 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi rewatch. Tomorrow 7:30. We'll go 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. Who cares about Central? Because I'm the only bozo who lives in it. But you guys definitely don't want to miss this episode. The Dyad in the Force, Element 7, and Darth Chaco will be. Oh my God.
This chat is great.
This chat's wild.
This chat is
tonight.
amazing.
It's wild.
Everyone wants the real host of the Podwan.
It's
I'm
wild.
just curious, like, because again, I'm always wondering what it's like to be like the audio listeners on Spotify.
Oh,
What the hell is going on in your head right now?
This is going to be like,
For all my faithful Audible audio Spotify listeners, the chat is letting everyone know how amazing I am, and they very much hate Luke and Harry Styles.
Anyways, we will be having Element 7 and Darth Chaco on, and we will be giving away some pretty awesome merch from Crimson Axe Outpost, Grand Admiral V. She she will not be on. Unfortunately, she is under the weather. So stepping in her place is Mara.J.Skywalker, or Beth, our favorite Obi-Wan stan. So that'll be fun. Come check us out tomorrow night on Stream Lounge. Other housekeeping. We just released non-Star Wars content for the first time. I did a reaction to the House of Dragon trailer. If you would be as kind as to go interact with that video.
Is that Game of Thrones?
Yes, it is. We are actually going to do reactions to all the episodes of both House of Dragon and Rings of Power. I don't know if we will upload all of them, but we'll see. But we're gonna be branching out into other franchises, and what a better why not now while there's like 18 different franchises going on, releasing episodes at the same goddamn time. My sleep schedule is non-existent, people.
Oh, it's not gonna be non-existent until Bad Batch comes out. That's when your sleep schedule is just gonna die. It's just gonna go off a cliff.
Yeah. I will be dying. You know.
Are you doing the 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. whatever you are for Andor?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I will probably be doing that as well on my podcast, the Pod Wants podcast.
Oh, when were you?
August 31st, baby.
Are you signed up? Do you want to be signed up on ours, which is the
Why do I need to sign
superior
up
one?
for my own podcast, Luke?
Yeah. So it's gonna be fun. So that's a little bit of what we are gonna be doing here for the fall slate. Be on the lookout for some of our other content and other franchises. Hereth.
Who's this Hereth production?
Oh, Harry Styles. Sorry.
Yeah.
Styles,
You can find me at my boy band concert.
When's One Direction coming back?
I don't know about that one. When Direction's coming, you can find our editor for all our music videos at Hereth Productions. And he does this like weird podcast called the Padawans podcast. It sounds very similar to the one Chase is hosting on. I was very confused when I got invited on. I was like, wait, this sounds like the person that my editor is hiring for. This is odd. But yes, you can find me on my concerts.
All right.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. You guys are both beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me on the Pod Wants podcast. You will probably not be getting another invite. This has been a train wreck and a half. I don't even know if I can upload this to Spotify. This is
well,
this has been a
lucky
trip.
for
Thank
you. Lucky for you, you won't have to, because that'll be my job. You can find Charlie D'Amelio at J.
Who's Char J? I thought it's just Charlie D'Amelio everywhere.
It's the secret personal account.
It's the secret personal account. I'm giving out his, on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find Alanis at Not a Kyber on all social media platforms, because there you go. Because she's awesome. And she's our ghostwriter. And
This is true.
If we didn't have her, let's be honest, the show would still be shitty.
What show? Why?
Why are you?
God damn it! Would you just
let you and invited you on?
Why don't you guys just fucking let it die now? All right.
Well, I'm very confused. You're being a very ungrateful guest right now.
Oh my god!
Damn, you thought I was gonna be the harder one with the 27,000 death threats.
I thought,
this bit needs to die, like all things should. But that's gonna be it for Light and for Life.
Chase, it's your cue.
Live long and prosper.
Oh Jesus! Oh my god!
And may the Vulcan lives live with you.
Vulcan lives matter.
Oh my.
Always.